Again, welcome to today's presentation. My name is Melissa Ness, and I am the Policy Manager here at Generations United, and I am joined by Allison Alt.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Public Policy Coordinator here for Generations United. We're so happy to have you here on our webinar.
For today's webinar agenda, we wanted to go through several items. The first is we just want to start off by highlighting, again, the importance of why we should advocate and what does that result in the end. Then we'll go into an overview of what this year's Hill Day will look like for our conference attendees. We'll go through a schedule of the day and some of the what to expect while you're on Capitol Hill. Then we'll briefly discuss several of the issues that we'll have you talk about in your Hill meetings that you may not be as familiar with. Again, we'll do a brief issue overview now, and then during your educational session in the morning on Wednesday prior to going to your Hill visits, you will have a much more in-depth explanation of the issues, and hopefully we can address any questions you have at that time. After that, we're going to look at what a Hill visit looks like, and then how to schedule a Hill visit with members of Congress. And then we'll conclude today's webinar with any questions that you may have. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. The importance of advocacy. So as most of you know, advocacy is the action of supporting a cause or a proposal. And it's also about empowering people to call on our leaders to take action. It's also about raising awareness of a cause to make lasting social change. And as we all know, in order to make that successful in the end, we need to shape public policy to sustain this change in all levels of the government. For the intergenerational community in particular, advocacy is a critical piece of our work. In order to break down the age-segregated policies and programs, we first have to share our successes and our stories with elected officials to have them see things through a different lens. You don't have to be an expert on all intergenerational policy issues. Not many are. But you just have to share what you know and what your experience is in the field, because after all, the intergenerational field is very vast, and you are an expert at the work that you do. So we've created a Hill Day guide to help prepare you for your visit to Washington. Hopefully everyone received that in an email from me before this presentation. If you did not, please email me afterward, and I will be sure to send that along to you. The Hill Day guide goes not only through the process of what to expect, but it also goes through an explanation of how to schedule a visit with your members of Congress step by step. We'll review that process at the end of today's webinar, but before we get to that, we wanted to share with you one of our past success stories that came as a result of one of our Hill Day attendees contacting their member of Congress. So in the early 2000s, Generations United had conducted a poll around grandparent housing issues and was seeking answers as to what are some of the biggest struggles that grandfamilies experience. And grandfamilies are grandparents and other relatives raising children. And one of the biggest responses we got was access to affordable housing in safe neighborhoods. So we worked with members of Congress and their staff to create a piece of legislation called Legacy. And Legacy was primarily about finding affordable housing opportunities for these grandfamilies that are raising their children. So we had advocated on the Hill independently, Generations United, for Legacy. And we also put a call to action out to our members, encouraging them to call and write letters and asking their members of Congress to support this. And one of our advocates decided he was so full of passion by this issue and wanted to make a difference that he decided to call his senator's office every day for months and months and months. And after several months of doing these calls, the staff actually had conveyed this to the senator. And she was so impressed with this that she actually looked at the issue a bit more in depth and was really moved by our cause that she ended up being one of the biggest champions of the Legacy bill that passed in 2003. And this was Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, who again has gone on to do wonderful things for grandfamily issues. And so this is just, one of many stories that really illustrates the power behind what you can do if you do these little steps along the way to always reach out to your members and let them know what's important to you. All right, well, let's move into an overview of Hill Day now.
Great. Just to give you a sampling of what you'll have to expect on Hill Day. From 7:30 to 8:30 a.m., we're going to be holding an informational advocacy morning session. And our staff will be on hand to answer any questions that you have about preparing for legislative visits and also to explain how the afternoon will unfold. Then at 9:45 a.m., we will hold the advocacy Advocacy and Hill Day preparation session, and that's to provide you with information about intergenerational legislation and how it impacts families, communities, and society. We're going to share tips for making the most of your visit with your legislators and discuss a little bit about nonprofit lobbying. And we'll also be doing a breakout session to practice and prepare you for Hill visits later in the afternoon. During that, we'll be handing out materials that you can take to your meetings and provide you with some talking points so you'll have some great things to speak about in your Hill visits. In the afternoon, we'll head over to the Hill where everyone will be going to their meetings with their legislators, and we'll discuss, key policy, intergenerational policy and advocacy for support of your programs. After you've held your meetings, you will meet with one of the GU staff in the designated areas and discuss how the meeting went, drop off your evaluation form, and once you've finished, you can head back to your hotel. Great, so just a little bit about what you can expect when you arrive in Washington. Washington attracts thousands of tourists throughout the year, so you can definitely expect to see a lot of crowds when you're traveling here. Also, you should know that when you're entering any Senate or House office building, you should expect to go through a metal detector. This is for your protection and for the protection of your members. You want to think a little bit about how much time you should allow between visits with your members. So you want to give yourself some adequate time to get from office to office. That's particularly if you're going from a Senate office to a House office, since the offices are actually several blocks apart. So I would take about approximately 30 minutes if you're going in between a House and a Senate office. If you're moving from an office on the same side of Congress, it will probably take about 15 minutes. But also please remember that you have to allow time to get through security, and there may be several tourists in line for security, so you might want to add a couple of extra minutes for any delays. When you meet with your member, you want to wear something that's comfortable for you, but remember also that you want to be presentable and look and feel your best. But you should definitely consider bringing comfortable shoes, a camera, a schedule of your arranged appointments, and any personal stories and information about your program that you'd like to share on your visit.
So that's a quick overview of what Hill Day will look like and just some things to expect. There's obviously, please do refer to that if you're looking for more information on what to expect, how to dress, and where things are located on Capitol Hill. So next we wanted to move into, again, just a quick kind of introduction to some issues that maybe you aren't as familiar with, and especially how they're intergenerational. So in your Hill visits, what do we want you to talk about? Well, obviously, first off, we want you to talk about your intergenerational program, your shared site, your story. If you've had an impact and a profound experience from something that's made a difference in your life as being a part of an intergenerational program, we definitely want you to share that story. But in addition to that, we have 3 issues that Allison and I are currently working on at the national level to try and make sure that the intergenerational voice is heard. So we're just going to go through each of these issues one by one and talk a little bit about those. And again, we will provide more information at the conference in the educational forum, but we did want to give you just an introduction at this time to these issues. The first one is Social Security. In the past year, Generations United has really taken a leadership role in protecting and improving the adequacy of Social Security so that it continues to meet its obligations to not only current beneficiaries, but future beneficiaries. Our focus has really been to raise awareness to others that Social Security is more than a retirement program. It's one of the nation's most successful income protection programs, and because of that, it supports families spanning all ages, from infants to retirees. Some key stats to note are that 1/3 of the more than 50 million people who receive Social Security benefits today are actually younger than 65. More than 6.5 million children in the United States receive part of their family income from Social Security through survivors, retirement, and disability benefits. And another stat on children is that Social Security covers more than 98% of all children in the event of the death or disability of a caregiver. So it's also one of the most successful life insurance programs, too, for children. It's not only a program that helps children, it also helps grandfamilies, which are grandparents and other relatives raising children. Social Security is a safeguard for families when tragedy strikes, and the vast majority of grandparent caregivers did not plan to raise another family. and they unexpectedly find themselves caring for children at this time. Many of these grandparents lived on fixed incomes, and for many, Social Security is essential to their family's survival. A key stat that we always refer to on grandfamilies is that even with Social Security benefits, 22% of grandparent-headed families are poor. And if we were to take and cut Social Security anyway and remove that, without Social Security, that group's poverty rate would be more than 59%, which really shows the impact it would have on low-income families with fixed incomes. So in general, our work, we try and strengthen the program, and we really focus the message on that it needs to be strengthened, and cuts will hurt both seniors and children today. So some groups in D.C. are claiming that cuts to Social Security are necessary, and they often frame it in the way that we need to do this now for our children and our grandchildren. But in reality, again, Generations United feels that the best way to support our younger generation is to strengthen Social Security and not cut it. It's a program that has and always should be there for them.
Great. And our next issue would be education. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which is often referred to as ESEA, or No Child Left Behind, is our nation's most comprehensive piece of education legislation. It authorizes education programs that are administered in the states. And as Congress looks to reauthorize this critical bill, we will be encouraging legislators to do several things. As you can see on your slide, the first would be to invest in high-quality early education. High-quality early education is not only critical for our youngest learners, but it is really a smart investment as well. For every dollar spent on high-quality early education, there is a return of up to $16. And studies have shown that children who attend high-quality early education programs have higher graduation rates, less referrals to special education, better earnings, and employment rates. With these excellent results, high-quality education is a strong foundation on which future education reforms can be built. Our second recommendation is regarding shared intergenerational sites. In times when budgets are tight, we can all save resources and create a sense of community by consolidating services for children, youth, and older adults under one roof. By using language in ESEA to encourage schools to provide services and programming in their facilities for all ages, we can save dollars while making sense. We have seen this actually firsthand. The benefits that these programs provide to children and older adults. For instance, we like to tell the story, instead of just building one or the other, they decided to build them together under one roof, and the Swampscott High School and Senior Center was created. The older adults and young adults interacted daily as they went about their activities, and they developed bonds and relationships, so much so that when the school's administration was deciding whether or not to close down their library due to budget cuts a few days a week, the older adults from the Senior Center volunteered to be staff for the library to keep it from closing. And we want to encourage more great school-based shared sites, such as the one in Swampscott, Massachusetts. And we can do that by including language in ESEA, and that would have a direct impact on shared sites. The number of school-based shared sites would likely increase for a number of reasons. It would bring greater awareness within schools and the educational field of the value and benefits of intergenerational collaboration. And depending how the language is included, there may be incentives for schools to create shared sites or requests for local agencies to come up with plans to create them. And even if it is just simply mentioned in ESEA, this still lets local education agencies know that creating school-based shared sites is something they can do with the funds available to them. So something small like mentioning shared sites within ESEA can create a lot of opportunity for growth in the intergenerational and shared site field. Our next recommendation is regarding grandfamilies and enrollment. We want to ensure that grandfamilies and other relatives that are raising children are able to enroll the children they care for in school without delay. ESEA can address this by including language to alleviate some of the barriers to enrollment that these families face. This includes a lack of birth certificates, school records, or their documentation, and exclusion from important individual education plan meetings. Our last and final recommendation is regarding older adult intergenerational and civic engagement. We believe that older adults are our nation's most valuable, untapped natural resource. With your help, we can encourage legislators to include language in ESEA to provide opportunities for older adults to become involved in schools, and the benefits to both generations are limitless. Students in intergenerational mentoring programs have shown improved grades, significantly less absences, and far less suspensions.
Great. And now we'll move on to the last issue, the Older Americans Act. The Older Americans Act is a major source of federal funding for both home and community-based services for older adults. It's often seen as the vehicle that seeks to help older adults stay active and healthy and independent in their communities as long as possible. The Older Americans Act, also known as OAA, contains several intergenerational provisions. These lesser-known areas provide programs that encourage both the young and the old to share their talents and resources and to really support each other in their relationships that benefit both individually, those participating, as well as the community. The first intergenerational program in Older Americans Act is the National Family Caregiver Support Program. And this was the first major intergenerational initiative that was passed and included in the program. The NFCSP actually provides supports and services to individuals under 55 years old, and in NFCSP there's specific funding. About 10% of all the funds in NFCSP can be given to grandparents and other relatives raising grandchildren. So it's a great resource for that constituency that oftentimes doesn't have a representation in legislation for these services. Another recommendation we have for the Older Americans Act, beyond strengthening the National Family Caregiver Support Program funding to increase its ability to continue these services, is to help baby boomers be active in their communities. And we would like to see more opportunities for senior centers to become modernized facilities that not only bring in more community services and community activities, but also have the ability to have intergenerational programs that have children and seniors interacting with one another. And then the second big intergenerational program that's in the Older Americans Act is the Multi-Generational Civic Engagement Pilot Program. And this provides grants to fund multi-generational activities and civic engagement activities. Right now it's a pilot program, and you can be eligible for it if it's a grant or an organization that supports grandparents and other relatives raising children, if it involves older volunteers in providing support and information to families with special needs, or if it's general activities that have multi-generational participation and again, civic engagement activities that are used through a multi-generational coordinator. So right now, this is a pilot program, and what we would really like to see is to have this taken to scale and become a permanent program, not just a pilot. So we'll be asking members of Congress to support making this permanent and investing in a nationwide adoption of this intergenerational model.
Also, I just want to mention that we will definitely be going more in depth into these issues when you come here to Washington. This is just an overview, so we just wanted to give you an idea of all the issues that we'll be covering when you come here for your visit. Just to give you an idea of what you should expect at your visit with your legislator, it's helpful to know ahead of time what a typical visit looks like. Usually when you walk into a senator or representative's office, it's a great idea to introduce yourself to the staff member that is running the desk and tell them that you're here for the meeting. And then you'll typically be meeting with either a staff member or the congressperson somewhere within the office. But sometimes that space is limited, so you may be meeting in a hallway or a variety of different spaces in the office. So please don't be discouraged if that is what happens. The offices can get very crowded, and there's lots of appointments during the summer, so that's very typical.
And we should just mention a fun note at this time is that we go on the Hill frequently, and the last handful of times we've gone, we've actually seen Senator Al Franken from Minnesota. We'll walk by his office, and he's outside with about 10 constituents holding a meeting, just very informally and casually. So don't ever be discouraged if you're not in an actual conference room. It can be professional and worthwhile no matter the location that you're having this interaction.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Yeah, and absolutely. And when you do, in fact, get to meet whoever you're meeting with, the staff member or the senator or representative, just make sure you introduce yourself, let them know what you're here for. And if you'd like to mention also that Generations United is a great resource also on intergenerational policies and practices, and that you're here with our conference. That would be great to mention also. And when you sit down with who you're meeting with, you want to kind of outline what you plan to talk about, your agenda for the meeting, and then discuss any work or programs, the issues that you've come to talk with them about. Personal stories and statistics are always very helpful for them, so please feel free to share those with whoever you're meeting with. You are an expert on what you do, and they love to hear about what's going on in their districts. We have a question, actually. How long does a typical meeting last? A typical meeting can be about 20 minutes long. It really typically depends on how long the staff member has for that meeting or how busy the day is. But yeah, it's about 20 minutes long, I would say, is a typical meeting. Great. After you've discussed your program and the issues that you've come to discuss with them, you want to make sure that you discuss any recommendations that you have for policy, and that is actually what we like to call the ask, what you'd like them to do following your meeting to follow up on this work. Also, we encourage you to leave behind any materials you have about your program or policies, or Generations United will also be providing you some things as well. And please thank them for meeting with you. You know, it's a wonderful opportunity for them and you as well. So
great. And then there are just a couple of things too. We got a few questions that relate to this. Just first off, we'll actually have a packet for you that we give that will have a one-pager on each of the issues we just went through, so that you can have that to leave behind with a staff member, and they can find out more information and more of the specifics about our recommendation. We'll also have, again, some information about Generations United work in DC, so that they know that we're a local resource that they can tap into. And like Allison mentioned, do stress that you're here as a member of Generations United, and that can also take some of the pressure off you feeling like you have to know the answers to everything. Because if you explain that and know that there's a local resource, they oftentimes will just seek us out to get the more detailed answers that they're looking for. Another thing, too, is we will be providing talking points for all of the materials for each of the issues and things to ask, things to bring up in the meeting. So we will do everything we can to help prepare you beforehand. One thing that was asked in a question is if we will send these to you in advance. Hopefully, we do hope to send these to you in advance. Part of why we don't have all of these materials set in stone at this moment is because things can really quickly change here in DC. Right now, we've got a lot of budget battles going on, and while none of our issues are maybe directly tied to that, it does have an effect on when bills will come up, how quickly they will, and what the progress is on each of the, Social Security, Education, and Older Americans Act. Right now, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act is up for reauthorization and was hoped to be worked on this year, but it's looking more and more like it might be held off till next year because of the budget stuff going on in DC. The same with the Older Americans Act. That's looking like they'll begin that early next year, but again, having these meetings now, they're very eager to talk about these issues because they know that they'll be working on these shortly. And then Social Security is obviously in the debates and being discussed in light of the budget crisis, and so that's actually very relevant for this time. And we'll continue, again, to craft those talking points and have them really focus on what's the up-to-date information so that we're giving you very appropriate and timely information and things to convey in your meeting. But we will hopefully send those out to you beforehand, but if not, we will have those for you the day of, and we will definitely use those in our back and forth practicing session that we have at the end of the educational forum. Great. So let's move on to actually looking at how do we schedule a Hill visit. For the Hill visit, most of you probably know who your members of Congress are, but for those of you who don't, there's a really great tool called congress.org. And we're going to take you over to this website. Great. So if you see on the right-hand side of the screen where our cursor is, there's a Find Your Lawmakers and Tell Them What You Think. What you can do here, if you don't know who your member of Congress is to type in your zip code and then press Go. And it will take you to the next screen that will show who both your local, state, and your federal elected officials are. So if you look at the left-hand side of the, can you just scroll over here? Perfect. Where the cursor is highlighting, that's going to be your federal legislators. And you can click on each of their names, and it will take you to another page about them. But another way that you can find out their contact information is to go to their website. And so, like for my elected official, Senator Tom Harkin, when I want to call his office, I'll go to his page, and at the top of the screen, there's the Contact Tom, and that will take me to show his Washington, D.C. office information, or you can scroll to the bottom of the page, and most legislators have a portion that will have the information for not only their D.C. office, but their local offices as well. So this is a great resource to have in mind as you continue on the advocacy path and you continue to reach out to your members of Congress. While you're in D.C., we want you to reach out to D.C., but you can always talk to the local offices that are nearest your office location. So once you identify who your member of Congress is and you have their contact information, the next thing to do is to call their D.C. office and start asking for the visit. We're going to...
I apologize. We had a little bit of a technical problem. We'll be back on track in 1 second.
We'll scroll far ahead. Here we go. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to call the Washington office for the member listed. And once we're connected, you want to say your name, like, hi, my name is Melissa Ness. I'm a constituent from Story City, Iowa. I'm going to be in D.C. July 27th for the Generations United Conference, and I work on intergenerational issues. I wanted to see if I could set up a schedule to have a meeting with my senator. What is the best way for me to set up that scheduling request? Each office is different, and some prefer to have them taken on the phone at that time. Some like to have them received via fax. Some like an email, and some even have a form on their website that they prefer people submitting those requests through. So what you really want to do is ask at this time and see what's the preferred method that will get my request fast-tracked so I'm not wasting my time in these other manners that they don't really check. So they'll tell you one of those options. And so if they say, I can, what issues do you want to talk about, I can transfer you to the appropriate person now. We want you to go ahead and say, I want to talk about my intergenerational work, but I also want to talk about these three issues: Older Americans Act, Social Security, and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Now, in Congress, there might be several staff members that handle those issues, and so if you want to go ahead and just say, whichever staff member handles that issue, please transfer me to them, and I'll talk to them about the visit. But really, all you have to do is give the information that you want to visit. These are the issues you want to talk about, and they'll transfer you to the appropriate person, and you can leave a message, or you can, again, just repeat all that information back to them. And what you'll need to do is try and be as specific as possible. So we've freed up, about 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon. You should go ahead and say, I've got 4 hours in the afternoon, and go ahead with the earliest time. Like, will 1 o'clock work? And if 1 o'clock is full, go ahead and keep going close to that, like 1:30, 2 o'clock, and just keep pressing and give them a few options, but also be as specific as possible, because that will help them just plug it into their calendar and not have to work around all these other logistical issues. So again, that's for the phone, and if they contact you and they tell you to actually convey your scheduling a request in another way, you can go to page 5 of the Hill Day Guide. And what we've done is we've not only given you a template phone script to use when you talk to the scheduler, when you call the office, but we've also given you sort of an email or a fax template that you can use to submit the request as well, where you insert your name, your position if you're with an organization, and just the request that you'd like to meet with a member of Congress or their staff to discuss those issues and the impact it has on your work in your community. And then once again, go ahead and detail the time that you would like to meet with them and remind them of the date you're looking at. So once you go ahead and submit the request in any of those 3 preferred manners, the most important thing to do at this point is wait a couple days and follow up once again. If you're given an email address to send the request to, go ahead and follow up to that email and say, hi, my name is Melissa. I just submitted a request a couple days ago. I wanted to see if you've made any progress and gotten something locked so I can put it on my calendar. Follow-up is very key, and as long as you keep talking to them, they'll usually try and make sure that they can schedule it, because summer is a really busy time. A lot of people come to DC, and not only do they sightsee, but they want the chance to meet with their member of Congress and talk about their program. So oftentimes you just have to be as politely aggressive as possible. So once you followed up, again, following up is the most important part. And again, we want to just preface, don't be discouraged if you get a follow-up and saying that the member of Congress isn't able to meet with you, but one of their staff members that handles these issues would like to meet with you instead. These staff are professionals, and they often know these issues inside and out, maybe even more so than the members of Congress. But the members of Congress always hold meetings with these staff, so they interact daily, if not more than that. And they will definitely pass along your concerns and make sure your issues in your program are known about. So you should always feel it's a success if you can get a meeting and at least talk about your program. So once you have the event or your meeting request locked, we want you to actually email me, and my email's on the screen, mness@gu.org, and let me know, the time of your meeting, what office you're meeting with, and what member, if it's the staff or the actual member of Congress that you'll be meeting with. And then once everything is confirmed and I have it on my chart, then you're ready to go for the conference day. It looks like we have a question. Someone asking, can we request a meeting with a congressperson or a senator that is not from our home state? You definitely could request. Usually they don't find time, unless you're a national organization, to meet with you if you're not actually a constituent of that state. I think you should go first with your officials that are from your state, but if you'd like to reach out to other people that are maybe on relevant committees or someone that works on an issue you're very passionate about, feel free to make the ask, but they will ask if you're a constituent. And again, that might be the barrier that they come to in the end. We can go ahead and go to the next screen. So once you've emailed me all the information, we're set to go, and I'll have that on hand too if you forget your scheduling information that you bring personally for the Hill visit. So at least I'll have a backup and I can tell you where you're supposed to be and what time the meeting is and with who. So the next step is scheduling meetings with your members of Congress. We would love for everyone to schedule their own meetings with their members of Congress. It's a really easy, simple process that we just outlined, and they love hearing from their constituents and having them express interest in meeting with their member of Congress. So we encourage you to do this. One thing I will preface is that if you are from one of the 4 following states, I would like you to hold off on scheduling your Senate visits because there are other attendees participating in Hill Day from your state that we'd like to hopefully coordinate and do a joint Senate visit so that you're all able to talk about your program and give a broader context of what intergenerational programs are. So those states are, if you're from California, New York, Pennsylvania, or Virginia, I will be emailing you tomorrow about going forward on scheduling Senate visits, and I will help coordinate those with you so that we can make sure to get as many people in a large group as possible. Another thing we want to mention at this time is that once you've scheduled your meeting and you've done a little look at the issues you want to talk about, if you're still feeling a little anxious and nervous and not entirely prepared for the Hill visit, you do have a few people that work with Generations United and understand these issues, and they want to be able to be a resource there because they often go on Hill visits, and they're willing to come along and accompany you to put you at ease if that would be of assistance. So after you've scheduled your visit and you've thought about it for a while, please do take the time, and if you're still feeling nervous, let me know, email me, and that you're interested in having someone accompany you, and we can arrange that. So hopefully it will be a more comfortable experience for you. All right, so that brings us to the end of this webinar, and now we'll answer some questions. I'm going to go ahead and answer a few that are actually in the question box first, and then I'm going to open up and unmute the phone line so that we can have the phone open as well.
Great, and I just want to let all of you know that are watching and on the phones that the questions will only be emailed to us. No one else can see them, so please feel free to send us any questions or concerns you might have, and we'll try and answer them during this webinar.
So the first question we have is, will we provide little stories or vignettes about how the talking points relate back to our constituencies that we want to represent. So yes, absolutely. What we will do is through stories, if we have any stories on hand of how, for example, Social Security, we will provide you with a story of how a child has benefited from Social Security. We'll also, how a grandparent raising their grandchild was able to, pay for their diapers and the medication with Social Security, but if they didn't have that, they'd have to pick one or the other. So we'll definitely give you pieces that you can use in your meetings to be persuasive and really illustrate how important these programs are. But we also encourage you, too, is that if you have any stories about your intergenerational programs or your shared site, do actually capture that. And if you can just draft a one-pager, have a photo, and maybe a couple paragraphs about how it's had an impact in your community, that's also a great thing to relay and leave with the staff members so that they can see what it's doing back home for their constituents. Okay, there's a question. Are there any plans to coordinate visits with people who have the same representatives? So right now, the people that have the same representatives are actually from the same organization. So we're assuming that you're going ahead already and going to coordinate your visit. The only overlap we've had thus far has been for Senate visits in those 4 states I stated earlier. So again, you should go ahead and schedule your visit with your representatives. And if you're coming with someone else from the conference who maybe isn't going to actually be at the Hill Day educational session but wants to come along with you for your Hill visit, you should definitely in the scheduling request say that how many people there will be from your organization attending that meeting so that they can get a size of the group. And again,
great, and like those who from the states that she mentioned that she'll be trying to coordinate visits for. So if you're in one of those states, you should be expecting an email from her shortly.
Great. So now we have another question. This is excellent. Another question says, what if you're turned down by everyone? Do their staff usually meet with you, or is it possible that everyone will say no? Usually they're able to meet with you. What you should stress is that you're here. You're not usually in D.C. You're here for a conference, and you want to meet with your senator or your representative, and you want to talk about these issues, and also talk about how you work at an organization back in your state that you want to tell them about. Sometimes it's harder if you just say you're a constituent. If you have an issue that you want to talk about, and especially if you're representing an organization back home, it's definitely convey that. It's a little easier ask. And if it's a larger group, if it's a couple people, usually you're able to get a meeting. Again, they don't usually turn down. The only time is if they're really overwhelmed. And we're going to get to this in a second, but we do encourage everyone in the next week or so to actually go ahead and put in the ask for your scheduling request so that you can get that on the books as soon as possible. Usually the times when you are turned down is when people call, like a week or a couple days in advance, and it just isn't enough time for the staffer to find, time in their schedule to make it work. So as soon as you can, go ahead and call their office and put the request in, and then follow up again as needed. And I would encourage you, every couple of days, even if it takes 2 weeks, sometimes they're on vacation around this time, but if it takes a couple weeks, put in a couple calls and just keep saying, I'm really interested. I would love to have a meeting, even if it's, with a staffer. I would really like to talk about these issues and tell them how it impacts the community. We have another question. Could you give us a list of other organizations in our state so we maybe can join together for meetings? Yes. So for the states that I said earlier, which are California, New York, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, tomorrow I'm going to be emailing everyone in those states, and I'm going to let you know who all is scheduled to participate in Hill Day, and see if someone is willing to take the lead on asking for a visit with your senators. And if no one is able to do that, then I can go ahead and help coordinate those visits. But yeah, I will pass along that information so that you guys can all coordinate, because in all likelihood, you guys already work with each other on other things. So we'll be in communication tomorrow about that piece, and hopefully that will help.
So if you are in one of those 4 states, I would wait for an email from Melissa. And if not, I would encourage you to schedule your Hill visit as soon as possible, and just remain persistent and following up with your senator or representative.
All right, the next question is, what materials do you suggest that we bring for our own agency? I would suggest if you have anything that does kind of a 101 of what you do, if you have something that really talks about what your program does or what your center does, that's a great piece to bring along. If you've got anything that shares stories, success stories, any awards you've won, or ways you've been recognized, that's also great to let your member of Congress see. In addition, for any of the facilities that are shared sites, or what we dub shared sites, we have one-pagers for your state that we've created on our website. Well, for most states, we haven't created them. We're in the process of doing the remaining 20. But we have created a one-pager front and back that explains what a shared site is, because oftentimes that's a term that members of Congress don't know about. So we'll have that piece in addition to the other materials that we have in the packet that you can take along to the visit, and that can be a helpful tool to explain to them what a shared site is. But also, definitely bring your local materials, anything that you think would be of assistance to helping them figure out, and see better what it is that you do.
Great. We have another question about planning which buildings you're scheduled to visit with.
Yes.
And just to remind everyone, you should definitely allow time between visits because buildings on Capitol Hill are spread quite far apart. In fact, if you're going between a Senate office and a House office, they're actually several blocks apart. So I would take about 30 minutes in between visits to go from a Senate office to a House office. If you're going to be going from a House office to another House office or a Senate office to another Senate office, then it would only take about 15 minutes. But like I said, you want to make sure that you tack on a little bit of extra time to make sure that you can get through security and any other unexpected delays that you might have.
And just to explain too, so on page 11 of the Hill Day Guide, we provided a map of Capitol Hill. The way it's arranged is that the U.S. Capitol is actually in the center, and then on one side of the Capitol are 3 Senate buildings, and then on the other side of the Capitol are 3 House buildings, and in those buildings are where everyone's offices are located. So to walk across the Capitol from one end to the other can be really draining. So what we suggest is that you try and do your Senate visits similar, like, you want to do those together. So if you do those first, you want to schedule those around the same time, and then you want to allow for about 30 minutes to walk across the Capitol and then go to the House visit. And again, it's going to be a little bit of a walk, and it will be a little hot outside. So absolutely, if you plan to wear nice shoes, at least bring some tennis shoes and put them in your purse or in your bag so that you can slip those on as you walk across and go to your other visit. So hopefully that answers those questions that are in the question box. Now I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone's phone so that if anyone on the phone that hasn't had a chance to ask a question would like to, they can at this time. So just 1 second. Great, it looks like everyone is unmuted. So if you don't plan to ask a question, please press *6. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, just once again, if you have a question, we would love to hear from you. If you don't plan on answering a question, if you could please press *6, that will mute your phone. We're getting a little bit of feedback on the phone. All right, I guess there's no further questions, but thank you. We really appreciate all the questions that we received.
And we just had one come in on the question box that we wanted to say. Someone asked, can I get more information about the issues you described in today's webinar at the conference? Yeah, we did mention that earlier. For the educational session we have in the morning, we'll definitely be going more in depth on the issues. But if you do have any questions in the meantime, you can always go to our website, www.gu.org, And on our policy page, we have a page dedicated to each of these issues, and it goes more into detail about the work we've done on those issues, some of our recommendations, and some of the work that we hope to do this Congress. So if you have any questions, please absolutely do contact us and use these resources. We also have, we'll go to the next slide, we have a list of some resources that we want to remind you of that are also really helpful as you go through the process of scheduling your visit.
Great. So for additional assistance, please take a look at the Generations United Hill Day packet. If you did not receive the packet, please email Melissa. Her email is on the screen. It's mness, N-E-S-S, @gu.org, and she can send that along to you. The Hill Day packet has in detail information about the Hill Day itself, the training sessions, and also scheduling the visit. You can also, we encourage you to go to your legislator's website and take a look at the issues that they work on, any committees that they're on, and the stance that they're taking on particular issues. We also encourage you to go to Generations United sites and sign up for our policy alerts. You can do that by clicking on the Get E-Alerts button. That should be on the right side of our website. And also, we mentioned congress.org earlier in the webinar. That's a great resource to find your legislator's contact information. Also, we just want to let you know that this webinar is going to be uploaded hopefully by tomorrow. And we'll provide a link on Generations United's website so that you can access this and refer to it later.
Absolutely. And then in addition to all these resources, we wanted to leave you with our contact information. So again, that you can always call us if you have questions or email us at the emails listed above. So thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. We'll have this available, both the PowerPoint and hopefully the audio archive, on our website tomorrow. So please feel free to access this again if it would be helpful and provide you with more assistance along the way. So thanks, everyone. That concludes today's webinar, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.